Hello there everyone. Today's an exciting time to be a Warhammer fan, I gotta say, for Tindalos and Focus Home Interactive have just announced, Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. And oh my, it is going to be a big one from what it sounds like. Looking at the descriptions and details regarding the game there, although it's still going to be some time until the official game is released. That's what it's looking like. For they are saying that it's going to be a 2018 release, but since we don't have an actual month or anything like that yet, it's probably a safe assumption to wait until later summer or even like fall and even the start of winter possibly before we actually get the game itself. But this is an exciting time nonetheless. Because for starters, the Tindalos have announced in their descriptions that we're going to be getting all 12 factions of the Battlefleet Gothic tabletop game. And while I have personally never played the actual board game, the closest I ever come to playing the Battlefleet Gothic itself was really in the form of the mobile version Leviathan, which had very limited type of factions. It had its own campaign, mind you, but it was far more true to the tabletop game than Armada is, mainly because of of course, the real-time versus turn-based type of play. But we are getting all 12 factions, and these are included as such. We are basically getting 3 different factions of the Imperium, the Imperial Navy itself, the Space Marines, and we are also going to get the Mechanicus, which are those ships that you've been seeing with the introduction of Gulliman. And it also is important to note that it seems like we are ramping up the timeline. We're modernizing it a little bit, or at least bringing it up to par with the rest of the Warhammer universe, since really Battlefleet Gothic has basically been gathering dust for God knows how long, maybe 20 years roughly, and hasn't really had much of an update, especially in the lore front. So it is going to be brought up to par to everything else, up to the Gathering Storm saga, which is where we get a brand new god for the Eldar. We have Gulliman being revived after his nearly fatal wound there and being put in stasis for like countless years. And of course, the original Battlefleet Gothic Armada, its timeline was based in the Gothic Wars, which, as far as I can understand, it's about 1,000 years from where current day lore is at least with Gulliman and doing his Indomitus Crusade that's currently underway with the Warhammer lore. Also, we are finally going to get the Necrons in Battlefleet Gothic Armada, and I'm going to say I am really excited to see how they implement the Necrons, because, for lack of a better term, those ships are deliberately overpowered. They would not work with the way Battlefleet Gothic Armada currently functions there, with the cruiser clash, the fact that you have to destroy entire fleets to get victory there. No. With the tabletop version, there was time limits, there were turn limits there, so they were allowed to deliberately make the Necrons overpowered and balance them based on their ability to secure the objectives, or even just, well, let me just put it bluntly, how they balance Necrons in terms of just like fighting your opponent's fleet is that they just straight up gave you double the points as far as killing a Necron ship, as opposed to something else of the same point value. That is how they balanced it. Necrons were deliberately overpowered, and I am seriously interested to see how true they are to Necrons for this game here, because it possibly means a complete rework to how the objectives, and at least the skirmish modes, can play out if they want to keep that power potential. They have basically Space Marine armor with hollow field, and their brace for impact basically makes their hollow field equivalent to a Space Marine armor, just to give you the rough example of what is to come with those things. They are going to be brutal, and I'm so excited to see them. And with them, of course, we have the Tyranids. That big, giant, gaping maw was a hive ship. And they are, for lack of a better term, kind of like the Orcs, how they play out in Battlefleet Gothic, although you can potentially modify everything about them. Maybe not to ridiculous levels as I'm making it sound, but I think you can modify their armor, their toughness, maybe their agility to an extent, but you can definitely, without a doubt, modify their weaponry. Hell, most of their frigates and ships are really melee-centric, so that's going to introduce a brand new mechanic there. Aside from ramming, there's going to have like melee weapons, tentacles, and claws attached to those things as well, which will potentially further enhance the ramming and aggressive nature that you can get with Battlefleet Gothic, especially unique to Tyranids. Also, Eldar are coming in full force here. We're going to have the Corsairs, which I believe are our current introduction to the Eldar that we currently have, and they also have the I'm trying to remember their actual name. Okay, I got it now. They are the Eldari. We're going to have the Eldari Corsairs, which are the Eldar we currently have, I believe. And then we're going to have the Eldari Craft World, which I think is more centric towards defending, or at least the naval fleets of the Craft Worlds themselves. So we're going to have two different versions of Eldar, and it's going to be interesting how their playstyles differ. And we're also going to have the Drukhari, which is basically the Dark Eldar. We're going to have them as well. They're going to be almost the same thing there. I don't really understand how their mechanics work. I never did get a chance to try them out in Leviathan because they weren't implemented there, but I'm going to assume they're going to be relatively similar. They're just going to have much more crueler tactics and methods to getting victory. We're also going to get two different versions of Tau from what they're calling. We're going to have the Tau Merchants, which, for those who don't quite understand how Tau works for Battlefleet Gothic, there was an original version for the current timeline of Battlefleet Gothic, which, of course, like I said before, is about 1,000 years before where Battlefleet Gothic 2 is planning to take place in. So we're going to have them when they're just starting to get a Navy fleet, which, in all honesty, was not really promising. There was a lot of criticism, from what I understand, regarding the Tau Merchant fleet. That's what they are actually called, the Tau Merchant. They were mostly like convoy ships that were armed with weaponry to kind of fight for them. And then our current incarnation of Tau, which is actually the Forge World type of fleet, which Forge World, an actual site that makes like additional, like grander scale type of Warhammer type models, made their own type of variant of the Tau fleet, and this is the Tau fleet we currently have there with the Custodian, the Protector, and this was Emissaries. We are, of course, without doubt getting Orcs, and without doubt we're getting Chaos. They are making a return as well, and I believe those are all 12 factions, so there's a lot to take in. Tindalos have certainly been busy, it seems like, although we only have an announcement trailer, so they still have a lot to prove there as far as what the gameplay itself is going to be and how it's going to be enhanced in comparison to Armada now. But we may potentially get answers to that question because they've already announced the first showing of Armada 2 at, what is it? The yearly event in Paris, apparently, over on February 7th and 8th. So I'm going to be looking intently at that. And if possible, I'm going to try and keep everyone up to date on what they have in mind. Because I personally am super excited about this. I am a little bitter, I'm not going to lie, with how multiplayer has been treated after the Tau have been implemented. Because in all seriousness, it has been well over a year since we had an actual balance or content patch of anything, of any note rather. Although technically we did kind of get, was it the Skulls for a Skull's Throne event there that included one cosmetic change to the Celestial Body, but let's be serious now. That was only a single cosmetic change, and even the Championship Series didn't really implement any enhancements or changes to the balance or anything of note. It was still a really nice treat to have the Championship Series though, and I welcome more of it in the future as Armada 2 nears its release date, but it was like probably only mostly for the summer sale as well as the Skullstorm event, I feel like, to a vague extent. So Tindalos still has a little bit of proof to those of us who really were into the multiplayer, I think, but this has promised to easily make up for it there. Let's just hope when they decide to get ready for Armada 3, assuming Armada 2 is another big success like Armada 1 has been, that they don't leave multiplayer behind like they did before, since you don't really need a huge player base to keep multiplayer going. Going strong, as in, especially for 1v1. 2v2 probably suffered the most there for those who really did enjoy that. I know I certainly did every now and then, so... But for 1v1, even for ranked mode, you don't really need very many players online active to keep that going, have that nice diversity to keep things interesting. And now, the big thing that I'm really excited about is, what are they going to do to mix up Battlefleet Gothic? Because again, we are going into a more current era type of Warhammer. We're not stuck with the Gothic era war that's Armada 1 took place in. So there is potential for some new stuff here. Mind you, the Imperial Navy is kind of stuck in a dark age for God knows how long, multiple millennia at the least, and with Gulliman's resurrection or revival rather, things they are only just now getting out of the Dark Ages, and while the trailer does show his flagship potentially there, you can see the rest of the Imperial Navy fleet there is pretty much what they were before. So it may seem not rather diverse for some of the factions there, especially those of the Imperium, mind you, but the Mechanicus are going to be a nice treat there. Hell, they almost look like every single one of them has like a Nova cannon of sorts. At least they have a frontal cannon there. So it's going to be nice to see how their playstyle differs from that of the Imperial Navy. And hell, with Gulliman leading the Indomitus Crusade there, the Space Marines have been getting new toys and new weaponry of their own there, especially like in the case of a brand new Space Marine, the Primaris Marines. So there is possibility to see new types of models, new types of Space Marine ships for Armada 2 as well, which really has me excited there. If they could pull that off without really pissing off the entire Warhammer community base, because this is very bold going to current era, what is it, Gulliman, the Gathering Storm, because there's tons of stuff here that could be done for them. There is a lot that they can do, since Battlefleet Gothic hasn't really been touched to my understanding, since it's like way back when, like I said, 20, 30 years ago. I can't remember the exact length of time it's been. Okay, so I just looked up there. It was actually just under 20 years since Battlefleet Gothic originally came out, the tabletop version. So I was a little bit off there, just a tiny bit as far as the 20-year prediction. But yeah, I don't think it's really been touched all that much ever since the expansions, which basically just included all the other races that we're currently going to be getting in Armada 2. So there is a lot, again, like I said before, that they can do in this new world that they're going to be bringing us here, because there's going to be new potential for brand new ships there with the Indomitus Crusade and Gulliman potentially bringing the Imperium out of the Dark Ages. The Tau can bring in new ships altogether, never mind all new races, and we don't even know what the craft worlds are going to be like in comparison. Well, not the craft worlds themselves, but the Eldar fleets responsible for defending the craft worlds, how they're going to differ as far as the actual pirate raiders, corsairs we currently have. So I, for one, am really damn excited for this game. It's definitely helped to renew my interest in Armada right now, because without a doubt, with how it's felt, the game being, for lack of a better term, kind of abandoned for like about a year or so, or at least after the Championship Series, it has been a little bit discouraging for me personally. So this has helped renew my confidence in the game and the company there, but they still have to prove, at least to the multiplayer community, that they're willing to put some serious effort into it and not just leave us hanging dry there. So I am going to be keeping an eye on this game as more news comes out, and I'm going to try my best to keep you all up to date as we move on forward into 2018, because the year's only getting started, and I know personally there's some games I'm incredibly excited to get into for the YouTube channel, and Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 is now one of them.